Hi, this is Kirk, the bariatric carnivore. How do you know if anything's true or not? I mean, how do you know if something is going to work or whether you should give it a try? Well, I use a three-part test. First of all, I hear about something. I heard about keto for a long time, but frankly, I wasn't going to try it just because some 20-something, that looked kind of healthy and cute told me that it was a good idea, and I really don't trust the media. So how do you figure out if it's true? Well, the three-part test that I use on anything to see if I really want to do something is number one, is there science behind it? So I'll research and look up the best data I can from the best experts that I can. Then I start looking for other people, real people that have used the diet, supplement, food, or whatever in their own lives. And if they're having positive results, at the same time, I'm also looking for people that have negative stories. So I'm looking for both at the same time, positive and negative stories. And if there's science behind it, and I can point to the studies that say this might work, then number two, I start looking at, the real life testimonials. Number three, I start testing it out on myself. And I try to hold one variable at a time. So if I'm trying a new supplement, what I'll do is I'll not make any other changes in my diet as best I can and try out that supplement for a month to see if it actually works or not. Sometimes 2 months, because it takes a little while when you're trying to make lifestyle changes or food changes in your life, it really takes a lot more time than just taking a drug. When I took blood pressure medicines for the first time, the results were instantaneous almost. Overnight, my blood pressure came down to normal. But when you're using a food change, for instance, going keto, that was really you have to try that out for almost 2 months before you start noticing the big changes in your body. There's some adoption phases that are going to always happen, and in the course of your research, you're going to find out, when you listen to real life testimonials, that there are often adoption changes. For instance, when I first started keto, people were talking about the keto flu, that there was about 2 weeks of feeling kind of miserable and they didn't know what was going on. Well, I now know that really what happens with keto flu is you're just peeing out a lot of fluid. Carbohydrates cause fluid to stay in your system. One of the reasons why my blood pressure was so darn high is I was eating a typical standard American diet, 150 or so grams of carbohydrates every day, which caused my body to retain a lot of fluids. Well, when you switch over to a keto diet where you're only doing 20 grams or so of carbs a day, your body is not retaining fluid and it's peeing out a lot. You're losing a lot of fluid rather rapidly. And when you do that, you're also peeing out all the salts, magnesium, electrolytes. So once I figured that out, after about 2 days, I started putting more salts back into my food and my diet, and lo and behold, the keto flu went away. I didn't feel miserable. So, but sometimes when you're trying things, there's going to be an adoption period, and you have to muscle through that, and it depends on whatever protocol you're doing. But, take a look at what other people have said, and learn from their experiences and realize that sometimes you have to muscle through things for a couple of weeks, particularly if you're going through a withdrawal. When I quit smoking, that was about 2 weeks of very intense withdrawals. So that happens when, keto, there's an intense period when you're trying to adapt. If you're trying to work out, if you're an athlete switching to a keto or carnivore diet, you really have about 6 weeks to 2 months of adoption that are going to happen before you can work out as intensely as you did the day you started. That's the fat adaptation period, where you can turn energy from fat and the energy that you're storing in your cells into quick, fast twitch muscles. So for intense exercise, it really takes about 2 months before you're fully fat adapted. You'll be fine with normal activities, but intense exercise is not going to be as fun or as good. But about 2 months afterwards, you really notice it. And I noticed that a lot because at the time I was training for a 5K race and my times went down pretty dramatically, and it kind of surprised me. I'm like, wait a second, I'm on keto, I'm supposed to have this great energy, and yet I don't when I'm working out. Normally, during the regular daytime, I was fine. But during the intense workouts and runs, I was much slower, and I couldn't figure out why until I ran across an article that explained it, that for any athletic performance, you've got about a 2-month adoption process. So keep that in mind. So those are the 3 ways I try to figure out if something is true. I also add in one other element: common sense. I mean, does it make sense? Does it make logic, intuitive sense? And if it doesn't make logic, intuitive sense, I have a tendency to ignore it. I can do that more on the front end. So, I mean, if there's no science, there's no common sense, there's no testimonial support for it, or there's a lot of negative stuff, and my own experience isn't showing that it's working, frankly, I don't do it. So those are my tests. So what was the scientist? What was the guy that really got my attention that made me want to do keto? Because I'd heard about it, I just ignored it because I didn't think there was any real science behind it. Then I ran across this video on Low Carb Down Under from Dr. Stephen Phinney. Now, you can see by his bio, Dr. Phinney is not an idiot. This is a guy that has his medical degree from Stanford. He has his PhD from MIT. He has taught, he has been a clinician. His experience is phenomenal. And if you want to spend a few hours listening to him, because you don't really believe me about keto, listen to him. He was the guy that really got me to pay attention to how insulin affects fat gain, and and how carbohydrates create diabetes. And once I understood that, I mean, here I was 5 years into past bariatric surgery. I'm gaining weight again. I'm figuring that I just need to eat less because my metabolism was slowing down. But actually, when I started to figure out that no, really what was going on was I was still eating a standard American diet, just less of it. And that was stopping that weight loss. That was keeping me kind of pre-diabetic. The nice thing about the bariatric surgery is it slowed down a lot of the damage, and I lost a lot of weight. And because I couldn't eat as much anymore and I had to prioritize protein, I was doing better. But I wasn't completely out of the woods. I was still pretty much pre-diabetic, only because of the carbs. And when Dr. Phinney's talk went on there, I realized, wait a second, there's a whole new world that I have not experienced before. That, I've always kind of blown off the Atkins diet. I've always blown off these people that just talked about limiting carbs and stuff like that as kind of quacks. But Dr. Phinney had the bona fide chops and the experience and the real clinical scientific knowledge from his own experiments. The thing that got me more than anything else is Dr. Phinney was actually the reason he got into studying low carb diets and the ketogenic diet in particular is he thought Atkins was full of crap. He actually set up an experiment hoping to prove once and for all that the Atkins diet could not work and didn't work. But he had the integrity to realize, yeah, it did. And he suffered through a lot academically in his academic career because he had the integrity to say, no, this is what the data says. And if we've learned anything in the last 3 years, we got to realize that there are very few docs out there in the world that have enough integrity to say when the data is not supporting their position. But he did. The other one that I really have a lot of respect for is Dr. Tim Noakes. The guy who wrote the book, The Lore of Running. He was a long-distance runner. He was in incredible shape, yet he developed type 2 diabetes. And he was the guy that invented the term carb loading for high-intensity sports, particularly marathons and ultra-endurance sports. And he wrote a book on it. And when he teaches now, he tells people to get that book, tear out that chapter because it's completely wrong. I have a lot of respect for people that who have pushed certain ideas, learned from from the data that it was wrong, and changed their positions. These are the type of people that I really want to listen to. And Dr. Phinney was one of those people. And I listened to his lectures and I realized that I think what he's saying is right. Strangely enough, I did not switch my diet overnight. One guy's opinion was not enough. I still researched it for 3 more months. I looked around at other YouTube channels. I found other lectures from other doctors. I started looking into the science and found out that there was a lot of really good scientists, from people from Duke, the Ohio State University, and others that were doing, Jeff Bullock was doing some great studies with ROTC cadets that showed a lot of what Dr. Finney was talking about. And Dr. Eric Westman over at Duke runs a program where he only does one thing: help people lose weight and get off their diabetes medications through use of a ketogenic diet. And I was sold on the science, but then I started looking at people who in real life who are applying it, and I saw that time and time again. The only problem that I kept running into is people who complained that they quit the diet and it didn't work. This isn't, being in keto, being a carnivore is not a diet. It's not a short-term fix. It's a lifestyle. It is a way of changing eating and changing the way you look at food and removing carbs. And you can do that for life, and you can have a lot of fun with it, and you can eat great food. And I highly recommend it. But don't think of it as going to be, I'm just doing this to lose weight or to get off my diabetes medicine. This is a prescription for life, for getting stronger, for getting healthier, for getting yourself in the best place that you can be, the best health that you can get. I'm completely convinced of it because it's worked so well for me over the last few years as a carnivore and 5 years as a low carber. So that's the way I look at it. That's why I hope you're listening to me, because I'm really not just coming at it from a place of, oh, this is my life experience and I just tried this because I saw it on YouTube. I'm a little more skeptical than that. I'm going to have to look at the evidence. I'm going to have to look at the testimonials. I'm going to have to look and see if it makes sense for my own sense of common sense. And then, does it work for me? And thankfully, keto and carnivore have all met all the tests. And we will show you more links to more videos, but I have included a link to the talk from Dr. Finney below. I think it's well worth your time if you want to listen to it. If not, we'll explore more of what he's saying later on in future videos, because he has a lot of very good stuff. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. If you like this channel, please like it, the video, subscribe. We're all alone in this together. And hopefully we can get more people to join us on this journey to get into better health.